Hello, my name is Matthew, and I just read The Red-Headed League by Sir Conan Arthur Doyle, the Sherlock Holmes story. Steve Donahue and I are reading all of the reading all of the Sherlock Holmes stories in the month of March. We're reading mysteries in mammoth quantities, and I've given myself a challenge to read all of the Sherlock Holmes stories with Steve, and also try to make videos on every short story that we read. And uh, tonight, I just finished A Scandal in Bohemia and um, went straight on to The Red-Headed League. Again, of course, terrific, but also um, like A Scandal in Bohemia, I feel like this is another very well-known short story, Sherlock Holmes story. And um, unlike the first one, where um, we have a little introduction with the relationship between um, Watson and Sherlock, and feel like there's a past, this story is very much in the present. Uh, Watson is just in Baker Street, in the room, just walks in, and Sherlock is in the middle of a meeting with this gentleman, a red-headed man, and very quickly Watson wants to step out, remove himself, and Holmes just said, "Oh, no, sit down. This is my colleague. I always feel better when my dear Watson is here." And turns to the person that is trying to tell their story and says, "We must recommence. Retell your story. I need to hear all of the details again." And you can trust Watson. And so very quickly we are into the case. And something that is so interesting with murder mysteries, and especially Sherlock Holmes stories, is the playful nature of the way things can be described. So you can have a character introduced with no description at all, and then a little interaction between Sherlock and Watson, where Sherlock might say, "Watson, how would you describe this person?" And then Watson will give a description, and then Sherlock will give a more accurate, superhuman description of a person. And so the way things are even described in these stories can have twists and turns, and um, maybe not suspense, but intrigue. And so we have this character. He's red-headed, and Sherlock just sort of rolls out his deductions that he was a laborer, and he was writing something just that morning, and that he was in China. And the gentleman just goes, "Good fortune! How could you possibly know these things?" Just like those great examples that we get in every Sherlock Holmes story. And um, Holmes says, "Well, I could tell that your right hand is a whole size larger than your left hand, and there was a shiny portion on the collar of your shirt, and you have a tattoo that must have come from China." And just everyone just full of clues. There's just clues all over everybody, and Sherlock can see them. And oh my God, you're right. You're amazing. And we have this gentleman go through his tale, and he's a pawnbroker. He has an assistant. The assistant shows him this advertisement for the League of Extraordinary Red-Headed Men, or the Extraordinary League of Red-Headed Men, whatever it is. And the assistant goes, "Well, you should apply for this. You've got your great red hair." And there's interruptions and um, questions from Sherlock and Watson as it's going along. Like, surely there would be hundreds and thousands of people applying for this advertisement. It's a tr- someone that set up some sort of trustee fund from America back to London, that red-headed men could get this position, um, and work very short hours, but have fairly lucrative pay. So the idea is that it would be a position that was sought after. And the day of the advertisement, or the day that the advertisement says that everyone can apply for the job, there's people there, and it's not quite so easy to get this job. You can't just be red-headed. It can't be a dull red or brownish orange or a very light yellowish color. It has to be that fiery red. And um, our gentleman that's talking to Sherlock has his interview, and like, oh my goodness, he's the perfect match. He has the perfect red hair for this job. And it's an absurd Kafka-esque position. From 10 to 2 every day, he's going to copy out the encyclopedia, the first volume of the encyclopedia. And it's very, the rules are very strict in one particular detail, that from 10 to 2, he must not ever leave his office. He'll have his paper, his pen, the encyclopedia, but he absolutely can't leave. And he's there for weeks, making £4 a week or whatever it is. And then one day the guy shows up, and there's just a sign saying the Red-Headed League had dissolved. He goes on his own little bit of detective work, tries to track down the person that he had spoken to, or the person running the office, and he gets nowhere. And he's curious, but um, he's also worried about the money that he lost. He says, I've been going there, I've been promised all this money, and then it didn't show up. Um, that's how he finds himself in the drawing room of Sherlock's apartment in Baker Street, and having this whole story. And so it's strange and fantastical, and just the weirdest series of events. And Sherlock is just always really fascinated with those obscure, more curious cases. What is the motivation? What's the Red-Headed League? What's going on here? And the person's dismissed, and Sherlock and Watson are sitting there, and it's a three-pipe problem. So Sherlock is gonna lounge in his chair, and he's gonna smoke three pipes, curled up in a ball, and we get the explanation. We start learning towards the end, but we get glimpses of Sherlock unwinding this story. And it's Saturday, and like so many of these stories, time is of the essence. So everything is very hasty and has to be done right now. Here it is. The game is afoot. That whole thing says to Watson, make sure you have your gun. We're going to be meeting at this spot, and there's a bit of like a scuffle, and detective work and chasing, and all of these things, trying to come to the conclusion of what is at the heart of the mystery of the Red-Headed League. Sherlock, of course, already is 10 steps ahead. He knows what's going on. We're Watson, so we're just trying to figure out what Sherlock already knows. And the resolution reminds me of a Woody Allen movie. I can't remember the name of the movie, but in this Woody Allen movie, the Woody Allen character decides to set up a false front of a business. I think it's a cupcake business or a pastry business or a cookie business. And in the basement, they're going to tunnel through the street over to a bank. And so they have this front where they're going to be selling cookies or pastries or whatever, just in order to have the right building so they can have this tunnel, and then they're going to break into the bank. The funny thing about the movie is that the cupcake business skyrockets, and it turns out that it's more lucrative to just have the business making the cupcakes than it would be to breaking into the bank. But it's the key part of the Red-Headed League. This red-headed gentleman had an assistant that was very keen on him seeing this advertisement. It matched his particulars to a T, and it was all this ruse. The whole thing was a ruse just to get this one person out of the house for a certain amount of time for several weeks. And now that it had dissolved, it let Sherlock know that we're at the end of the case. They no longer need him out of the house or out of the building. And it all kind of wraps up. And it's really fun. Getting the case, hearing this, and even when you know it, the imaginative powers that you could say Sir Conan Arthur Doyle had, but in the world, in this context, the imaginative powers that the culprit would have to come up with such a screwball, outlandish plan. The kind of intrepid nature of the red-headed person really just wanted to know what's going on. Sherlock's curiosity, just hearing this and going, it's not all that important. It's an easy case, but it's so strange. And how pleasant is it to just pay attention to just the most absurd, strange story. And something else that I want to mention that's just a connection. This story ends with a quote and an allusion to Flaubert. It's a quote by Flaubert that man is nothing and that the work is everything, or something along those lines in translation. And the first story that we read, that I read, Scandal in Bohemia, also has a literary allusion where Sherlock says to Watson at the time wanted to remove himself from the case, and Sherlock says, oh, like, my good boy, I would be nothing without my Boswell. So Sherlock is Samuel Johnson, and Watson is James Boswell. So there's still literary allusions and references that kind of pop up very lightheartedly in the best literary fun. So it's the second short story for tonight, maybe a third. But yeah, the Red-Headed League, very well known, and very well known for good reason. So if you've read it, please let me know. Leave a comment if you would like. Thank you for watching, and take care.